there's something that happens before, right? Isn't there something with the scrolls?
Yeah, we'll take them out, but I'm not sure when, where that is, whether it's because it's before the Kazan starts singing.
Okay.
I don't know if it's when we were actually playing or not. I forget.
Okay.
Right. The rabbi will direct, so he will just follow his cues.
Okay.
He'll be standing right next to you, so he'll just
All right. Sounds good.
just follow whatever he says.
Yep. I'll just get tuned up. Hi, good to see you. How are you? Hey, thanks for having me again.
Oh, you do a great job,
Thank you.
and it enhances our whole thing.
I appreciate that.
So just the mood music now,
Yep.
and then we're gonna grab the
Microphone.
microphones
Yep.
for the beginning. Actually, better to have both microphones if possible, because if you only have one, it's gonna the camera's gonna do one of these like
Oh, really?
it's not gonna be able to find you. Is
Okay.
there like a place that makes sense that's not in your way for me to put it?
Oh, I think just
Like
like,
this here? Okay.
yeah, that would be fine.
Great.
That should pick up okay. So the camera's based on sound, huh?
Yeah, because we don't want to have to do any actual moving of it on our holiday.
Got it.
So it's all a computer thing based on sound. But because we usually have it set so that this microphone sends the camera to here, and that microphone sends the camera to there,
Okay.
only if both microphones are active do you
Yep.
get a central shot.
Right.
And since you're in the center, I think we need to have both microphones active.
You don't want to confuse the robot.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, so what I've got is you for
Yep.
10 minutes now.
Yep.
Then I'm going to speak. We're going to take the tours out. And then before the cantor sings, you're going to do the Kona Drake
Okay.
piece.
So just a quick clarification. In the past, I have some Bach. I usually play it while they're processing with the scrolls.
Right,
if I
but we're
remember
not
correctly.
doing the procession, so you
Okay.
can just play the Bach
Right now.
now.
Okay.
And
And then I'll just wait for a cue for
yeah,
them.
we're just going to take them out and they're going to stand here.
Okay.
So there won't be any like actual processing because because of COVID.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense.
Take all of our past presidents, oldest members of our congregation, and have them walk.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it.
Gemar Chatima Tova. Welcome. What vow can I make before you, God of the ages? What vow can I make before you, my people? Empty words sting the heart. Empty promises rend the soul. This is my pledge: to love with all my being, to the best of my ability, even when love seems to have departed. Yes, some days I will love more deeply, more fully, you, my God, and you, my people. Some days I will struggle even to love myself. Yet here is my vow, simple and pure, to remember that love surrounds us. Not to give up on loving, on love, on the love that flows from you, on the love that surrounds us all. We turn to page 202, and I invite everybody who is not currently wearing a talit to put on a talit so that we are all wrapped and surrounded by God's love for the entire Yom Kippur. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehitatef batzitzit. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, ruler of time and space, who has made us holy through mitzvot and instructed us to wrap ourselves in tzitzit. Page 203. I hereby forgive all who have hurt me, all who have done me wrong, whether deliberately or by accident, whether by word or by deed. May no one be punished on my account. As I forgive and pardon fully those who have done me wrong, may those whom I have harmed by word or by deed forgive and pardon me, whether I acted deliberately or by accident. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, my rock and my redeemer. At this time, I invite those past presidents who wish to come forward as the ark is opened, and Alana begins to lead us in Or Zarua La Tzadik, page 204. Please rise. Page 204 at the bottom.
Vishiva Shamala Uvishiva Shamata Alda Tamakom Vealda Takahal Anu Matiri Late Palal Im Havaryani Vishiva Shamala Uvishiva Shamata Alda Tamakom Vealda Takahal Anu Matiri Mahit Palal Im Havaryani Vishiva Shamala Uvishiva Shamata Alda Tamakom Vealda Takahal Anu Matiri Late Palal Im Havaryani
Page 205.
Kol Nidre Ve'asarei Ve'charamei Ve'konamei Ve'chinuyei Ve'kinusei Ushavu Udeacharim na Vedasarna al nafshatana Me'om Kippurim zeh ad Yom Kippurim haba aleinu haba aleinu letova kun icharat navon kun yehon sharon Shevikin Shevitin Betelin umevutalin Lasharirin velokayomin Nidrana lo nidre Be'asarana lo asare Ushevuatana la shavuot Kol nidre ve'asarei ve'charamei ve'konamei ve'chinuyei ve'kinusei Ushevuot Dindarna Udeishtabana Udeacharimna Vedasarna al nafshatana Me'om Kippurim zeh ad Yom Kippurim haba aleinu haba aleinu letova kun icharat navon kun yehon sharon Shevikin Shevitin Betelin uvevutalin Shevikin. Shevitin. Betelin umevutalin. Lasharirin velokayamin. Nidrana la nidre veasarana la sare ushevuatana la shevuot.
Nislach l'chol adat b'nei Yisrael v'lager hagar b'tocham ki l'chol ha'am yishgagam.
V'nislach lecholam b'nei Yisrael v'leger hagar b'tocham ki lecholam bishgaga. V'nislach lechol adat b'nei Yisrael v'leger hagar b'tocham ki lecholam bishgaga. V'nislach lechol adat b'nei Yisrael v'leger hagar b'tocham ki lechol ha'am bishgaga. Selach na lavon ha'am hazeh kegodel chastecha v'chasher nasata le'am hazeh mimitzrayim li'adena v'sham ne'emar Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha. Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha. Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha.
The Torahs are returned to the ark. And I invite Jackie up to offer some words on behalf of the Board of Trustees. As soon as the Torahs are back in the ark, you may be seated. And a Yasher Koach and thank you to our past presidents for standing and holding the space. A welcome back to Natalie, to our community. We'll welcome you back. You may be seated.
The start of school for me this year was extra special. After having taught remotely for the last year and a half, it was almost magical to share physical space with my 7th graders again. I imagine many of you who are attending in-person services for the first time in a very long time have a similar feeling. So, since we're all back together again, and I'm feeling all teachery, I'm going to do a teachery thing. If you've attended a live stream or Zoom service over the course of the year, give a thumbs up. If you've attended one of our many adult ed offerings over the past year, give a thumbs up. Thumbs up if you enjoyed the Deborah Sachs Mintz Weekend of Song and Celebration. If you received a fabulous Library of Gratitude book this past March, give a thumbs up. And I hope you all took advantage of the book group and or the evening with the author. What about Mishloach Manot and the lovely Rosh Hashanah goodie bags? Give a thumbs up if you are a member of our amazing Chesed committee. These are the folks that have been making sure our community has what it needs this past year, whether it's check-in phone calls, running errands, or delivering meals. Actually, everyone give these folks 2 thumbs up. Okay, I could go on, but like any good teacher, I know when I've made my point, and I will move forward. Now, I realize it appears that all of this happens quite magically, but it's actually just magical people, those who give so much of their time and energy to make our community the special thing that it is. We owe a huge thank you to so many. First and foremost, the Executive Committee and the Board of Trustees. These are our leaders, and without them, I wouldn't be a very good president. Rabbi Spitzer, who over the past year has provided our community with not only spiritual guidance, but emotional support and fresh ideas. The Ritual Committee, who throughout the last year have been able to reimagine how we can pray together and have provided our congregation with spiritually uplifting services, whether in person or virtually. Our Adult Ed Committee, led by Rob Fox and Gary Reich, who have brought us a huge variety of interesting and engaging classes, who you were able to enjoy from the safety and comfort of your home throughout the past year. Steve Schmidt, Sharon Watkins Fox, and the Strategic Planning Committee, who after more than a year of hard work have created our congregation's vision for the next 5 years. We have a large, thriving religious school this year, thanks to Jack Mincer, Jeff Shapiro, the faculty, and the school board. Thanks to Risa, Anita, Sharon, and the kitchen crew, we've been able to enjoy delicious takeout food from Catering's Meals to Go. And there are so many more that I'm not mentioning, but appreciate immensely. I don't think any of us figured we'd still be dealing with this pandemic by now, but we are, and if I may say, 18 months later, we're killing it. So there are some more folks to mention. I want to thank our Executive Director, Josh Cooper Ginsburg, who was instrumental in organizing and scheduling our virtual services and programming. And to all of you, our members, for your patience when things haven't gone exactly as planned. The technology, which we sometimes want to take a hammer to, has allowed us to maintain a strong connection with our community over the past year. The folks on the reopening task force have been by my side for the last 18 months, ensuring that as we move towards more in-person services and programming, that we are doing it in a way that keeps everyone in our community safe. This has been a big, important task. I could go on, but I won't. So here's the plug. I know you're all waiting. You've seen the amazing things that have been happening at Agudat Achim this past year, all due to the hard work of these and many, many folks I haven't mentioned. We've been fortunate to have the ability to provide our members and the broader community with services and programs, religious school, and support, both spiritually and physically. But unfortunately, this doesn't happen by magic alone, or even by magical people. Everything costs money, as my dad would say. And wait, there's another one of his. Money doesn't grow on trees. This past year, while many organizations were hit very hard by COVID, we've been pretty fortunate to be able to tighten our belts and, for the most part, hold our own financially. It's not just luck, though. We owe major thanks to our many hardworking volunteers and generous donors. Now, I'm going to tell you what I told my 7th grade Timberwolves just the other day, because I think it's appropriate for our Agudat Achim community as well. We're all incredibly lucky to be part of a community that cares for each other. We all need to do our part so that we can continue to learn, grow, and have fun together. This evening, I'm asking you to show your support of our community by considering making a donation to Congregation Agudat Achim. I realize that many of us have been financially impacted by the pandemic, so now more than ever, if those of us who are able to make donations do, we can continue to support our entire community by providing everyone with the spiritual and social connections that so many of us have enjoyed in the past year. Lashana Tova to you and your family.
Tammy. We're going to light the candles for the beginning of Yom Kippur. While Tammy comes up, I'll just say this one brief thing, which is, oh, I see a box for the pledge cards. That wasn't what I was going to say. Kol Nidre has to happen before Yom Kippur comes in, because Kol Nidre is actually a legal proceeding, which is why we're only doing the welcoming in of the holiday now, after we finished the legal proceeding and the asking for money. Well, now we can bring in the Yom Tov. You can follow along on page 199. It's not you, it's Box. They're just old.
Okay, I need help. There we go, thank you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Yom HaKippurim.
Amen. And we join together for Shechianu, thanking God for sustaining us, for granting us life, and for bringing us to this moment. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. I invite you to turn now to page 207, and we rise for Baruch Hu, the call to prayer. Page 207.
Yai, nai, 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 nai. Yai, nai, 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 nai. Yai, nai, 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 nai. Yai, nai, 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 nai. Yai, nai, 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 nai. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
You may be seated as we continue on page 207.
Umavir yom umevi laila umavdil ben yom uven laila Adonai tzvaot shemo el chai v'kayam tamidim lo chalenu le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai hamariv haravi.
Amen. Page 208.
Ahavat olam beit Yisrael amachavta Torah mitzvot chukim umishpatim otanu limadeta Al kein Adonai Eloheinu V'shachveinu v'kumeinu
נשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגע יומם ולילה, יומם ולילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממני לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto, Leolam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ela asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam B'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'leftecha v'darach uv'shavtecha uv'kumecha u'kshartan leod al yadecha ve'ayu letotafot bein einecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uv'isharecha v'hayam. Adonai Elohim Emet. Umalchuto bratzon kiblu aleiham Moshe Miriam uvenei Yisrael lecha anu shira b'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh Tehilot Osefela Malchutecha Ra'uvanecha Bokeyam Lifnei Moshe Zeili Anu Ve'amru Adonai Imloch Le'olam V'ad V'nemar Kifad Adonai et Yaakov Uga'alo miyad chazak mimenu Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael.
Page 211.
Hashkimeinu Adonai. ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, Baruch atah Adonai, haporeh sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
We rise, page 212, for the verse which is the biblical sanctification of the day, the verse which recurs so many times throughout our Yom Kippur service, which the Kohen Gadol would say in the Holy of Holies, right after coming out of the Holy of Holies, which sort of encapsulizes and synopsizes what the meaning of this holiday is, together on the top of page 212.
Ki vayom hazeh yechaper aleichem letaher etchem mikol chatoteichem lifnei Adonai titaru.
Abraham Joshua Heschel taught to pray is to take notice of the wonder, to regain a sense of the mystery that animates all beings, the divine margin in all attainments. Prayer is our humble answer to the inconceivable surprise of living. It is all we can offer in return for the mystery by which we live. Who is worthy to be present at the constant unfolding of time, amidst the meditations of mountains, the humility of flowers, wiser than all alphabets, clouds that die constantly for the sake of God's glory? We are hating, hunting, hurting. Suddenly we feel ashamed of our clashes and complaints in the face of the tacit glory in nature. It is so embarrassing to live. How strange we are in the world, and how presumptuous our doings. Only one response can maintain us: gratefulness for witnessing the wonder, for the gift of our unearned right to serve, to adore, and to fulfill. It is gratefulness which makes the soul great. The individual whispered Amidah for Mariv on Yom Kippur can be found on pages 213 to 221, immediately following Chatzi Kaddish.
Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Ve'yamad divra kirtei ve'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon Uvchaye decho Beit Yisrael, Bagala uvizman kariv ve'imru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba mevorach, le'olam le'omei omaya. Yitbarach v'ishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitshama v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha brichu leila leila mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiron be'alma ve'imru Amen.
If you haven't completed your individual whispered Amidah, please continue. Tonight is the night of Kol Nidre, the night on which we seriously contemplate the power of our speech. The night we remind ourselves that the words we say matter. How we say our words matters. Just as God created the world with words, so we create our social world with words. Before we begin to pray, we recite a formula reminding us that words have power. They both create and nullify obligations. Just as words have the power to create, so do words have the power to hurt, to injure, and to destroy. Our prayers are not meaningless. Words count. Each of us is guilty of using our words to hurt others. And I'm sure that each of us has experienced being hurt by others' words. It is largely the ability to speak that distinguishes us from the rest of the animal world. By speech, I do not just mean the ability to communicate information. We know that many other animals are capable of that, each in its own way. I mean the ability to speak of past and future, the ability to imagine and conceptualize, and the capacity to employ words as, using a term coined by the philosopher J.L. Austin, performative utterances. Jewish tradition teaches us that Yom Kippur cleanses us of our sins, but only of the sins ben Adam lamakom, between humans and the omnipresent. Yom Kippur can wipe away, God will forgive, only our sins which do not affect other people. For the transgressions ben Adam lachaveiro, between human beings, Yom Kippur is only effective if we have already taken steps to rectify our mistakes and sought forgiveness from those we have wronged. A few years ago, I began seeing on Facebook the phenomenon of blanket apologies. If I have hurt you, knowingly or unknowingly, intentionally or unintentionally, please accept my apology. Lately, I've been seeing more posts along the lines of, if I have done something that hurt you, tell me what it was. Let us talk about it and see if there is a way we can work it out and grow from it. Clearly, marking this completely anecdotal progression on my Facebook feed, people are uncomfortable with the performative utterance of apologizing. That's not actually the same thing as saying sorry with sincerity. And I get that. I too think that posting once on Facebook does not absolve you of doing the hard work of actually calling up the people that you hurt and apologizing for a specific moment of having caused harm. Or the hard work, perhaps more hard, of calling someone who harmed you and telling them that you're still holding on to the way that made you feel. After all, your friend might not even know that she hurt you. To give her the opportunity to offer an apology. So we're uncomfortable with this kind of performative utterance. Yet, on Yom Kippur, our services are full of this kind of performative utterance. We do the confession in a collective voice. Not because each of us did all of the things on that list, but because we are all mixed up with each other, all responsible for each other's misdeeds, all guilty. Kol Nidre itself is a performative utterance which purports to nullify in advance all of our promises that we might make in the coming year. All of them. Even the Salichot prayers, which we are about to begin, are a performance of words that God taught Moshe to help tap into God's attributes of mercy. Are we uncomfortable with the implication of Kol Nidre? Do we think that the words that we say on Yom Kippur are not sincere? Ultimately, I think that what Judaism is teaching us is that if some of our words matter, all of our words matter. How we speak to each other, what we say to our partners, to our parents and our children, to our friends, to those with whom we share our community, our jobs, our lives, that matters. Even the words we use in our less significant relationships matter. How we speak to the valet, to the server, to the grocery packer, to the shop owner. Judaism teaches us the importance of being careful in our speech, of the importance of avoiding ona'at devarim, verbal mistreatment. In the Talmud, Masechet Bava Metzia, there is a discussion of the laws of verbal mistreatment and the relationship between verbal mistreatment and monetary mistreatment. As I was writing this sermon, I wanted to share some of that discussion with you, but then I kept reading the section of the Talmud, and the next section on the same page was a story about a rabbi who was mistreated. So I decided to share that with you instead. The Talmud teaches that the gates of heaven, the gates of prayer, are always open for a person who was verbally mistreated. What is an example of verbal mistreatment? Onad dvarim. Okay, I kept in a little of the legal discourse too. The rabbis taught that one should not remind a person who has done teshuvah, who has apologized to their fellow human beings, confessed their sins, repented, and moved on with their life. One should not remind that person of their previous wrongdoing. One form of verbal mistreatment is reminding a penitent person of their earlier deeds. The Talmud asks, which is worse? Verbal mistreatment, onat dvarim, or monetary exploitation, onat mamon? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai explained that verbal mistreatment is worse because the verse in Leviticus that prohibits it also says to hold your God in awe. But the verse that prohibits monetary exploitation doesn't mention God. Rabbi Elazar explained that verbal mistreatment is worse because it affects one's body, but monetary exploitation only affects one's stuff. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani explained that verbal mistreatment is worse because unlike monetary exploitation, for which there is a legal solution, restitution, there is no way to make restitution for verbal mistreatment. The Talmud continues to report this discussion of verbal mistreatment. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak shared, anyone who humiliates another in public, it is as though they are spilling blood. That is, verbal mistreatment in public can feel murderous. Rabbi Elazar shared, since the day the temple was destroyed, the gates of prayer were locked. Nin alu, locked. The same word as ni'ilah, the service of the locked gates that we will say tomorrow evening as the gates are closing. the gates of prayer, the gates of heaven. Yet the gates of tears are not locked. And one who cries before God may rest assured that their prayers will be heard, as it says in the Psalms, "Hear my prayer, Lord, and listen to my pleading. Keep not silence at my tears." Rav Chisda shared, all the gates of heaven are apt to be locked except for the gates of those who have been verbally mistreated. Tradition has it that the prayers of anyone who cries out due to ona'at dvarim, verbal mistreatment, are heard immediately. I think it gives Kol Nidre a new layer of meaning. Why do we focus so much on the power of words on Yom Kippur? It's deeply connected to this idea that the gates of prayer are open to the one who has been hurt in this way. Words matter. So in this context, the Talmud tells a story. I'm going to tell the whole story because I think it's a great story. It's pretty long. You'll forgive me. It's Yom Kippur. I think this story helps us to understand what Yom Kippur, also what Jewish tradition is all about. Maybe you've heard this story before. We learned in a Mishnah, if one cut an earthenware oven widthwise into segments and placed sand between each and every segment, Rabbi Eliezer deems it ritually pure. Because of the sand, its legal status is not that of a complete vessel, and therefore it is not susceptible to ritual impurity, but the rabbis deem it to be ritually impure, as it is functionally a complete oven. And this is known as the oven of Achnai, the snake oven. Why is it called a snake oven? One rabbi explained that it is because the rabbis surrounded him with their statements like a snake and deemed him impure. On that day, when they discussed this matter, Rabbi Eliezer answered all possible answers in the world to support his opinion, but the rabbis did not accept his explanations. So Rabbi Eliezer begins with speaking. He tries to convince the other rabbis of the rightness of his opinion using the appropriate method of the system, using his speech. But it wasn't effective. After failing to convince the rabbis logically, Rabbi Eliezer said to them, "If the law is in accordance with my opinion, let this carob tree prove it." The carob tree immediately uprooted itself from the ground and flew through the air 100 cubits, about a half a football field. And some say it flew 400 cubits. The rabbi said to him, "Rabbi Eliezer, you cannot bring legal proof from a flying carob tree." So Rabbi Eliezer said to them, "You don't like my carob tree? If the law is in accordance with my opinion, let this stream prove it." The stream immediately turned backward and began flowing uphill. I'll just pause here to say, a flying carob tree isn't going to hurt anyone. Okay, I mean, unless it accidentally bumps into someone while it's flying, right? But turning a river to flow the other direction, there's potential great damage that could occur from that. Not just in the flooding of the river, but also in the inability of the river to continue its irrigation of the crops downstream, right? I think we're supposed to understand from this that there is an escalation to this story. The rabbi said to him, "Rabbi Eliezer, you cannot bring legal proof from a stream flowing uphill." So Rabbi Eliezer said to them, "Okay, you didn't like my flying carob tree, and you didn't like my river going the other direction. If the law is in accordance with my opinion, let the walls of the study house prove it." So the walls started tumbling inward. In other words, directly impacting the other rabbis, right? Now, it's violence that is very local. But Rabbi Eliezer's study partner, Rabbi Yehoshua, stood up and spoke to the walls and said to them, If Torah scholars are contending with each other in matters of Jewish law, what is it to you? And the Gemara tells us that the walls of the study hall did not continue to fall down out of respect for Rabbi Yoshua, but they did not stand all the way back up out of respect for Rabbi Eliezer. The walls remain leaning to this day. Well, again, the story is emphasizing the power of speech and the way that speech has power in the world. Rabbi Eliezer then said to them, "If the law is in accordance with my opinion, let heaven prove it." The voice of God emerged from heaven and said, "Rabbis, why are you disagreeing with Rabbi Eliezer? The law is in accordance with his opinion in every case." So God weighed in. Rabbi Yeshua stood on his feet and said to the voice of God, "It is written in the book of Deuteronomy, Lo bashamayim hi, the Torah is not in heaven." We just read that part of the Torah. It was just 2 Shabbases back in Parashat Nitzavim. Lo bashamayim hi, in the context in Deuteronomy, means the Torah is not in heaven that you should say, "Who will go get the Torah for us?" Right? In other words, it's not too far away for you. It's not in heaven. It's not across the sea. The passage in Deuteronomy chapter 30 that this is from says, no, the Torah is in your heart and your mind to do it. Torah is accessible to everyone. Rabbi Yeshua is standing there and telling God the Torah is not in heaven. Rabbi Yeshua is reinterpreting the verse to mean, sure, Torah is accessible to human beings. Torah is not accessible to the divine author of the Torah. What is the relevance of the phrase, the Torah is not in heaven, in this context? Rabbi Yirmiyah says, ever since God, the author of the Torah, gave the Torah to the Jewish people on Mount Sinai, we do not give the voice of God a say in legal debates, but we follow the interpretations of the rabbis. As it says in the book of Exodus, follow after a majority. I'll just pause here to tell you, if you look up that verse in Exodus where it says follow after a majority, the word right before it is do not. So, when they quoted that piece, they're clearly playing with the idea of the power of language. The rabbis are saying we even have the power to take a verse so out of context that the verse says, do not follow after the majority to do evil, and we're just going to follow after the majority. The Gemara relates, many years later, Rabbi Natan encountered Elijah the prophet. In the Talmud, they're always running into Elijah. And he said to him, what did the Holy Blessed One do at the moment where Rabbi Yeshua said, the Torah is not in heaven? Elijah said to him, the Holy Blessed One smiled and said, my children have triumphed over me, my children have triumphed over me. The rabbis use words of Torah to defeat the author of the Torah in a legal debate. It's a powerful statement about the power of words. And this is where people usually end the story. But if you stop telling the story here, you miss the deeper meaning, and you miss the point of why the story is in this section of Bava Metzia in the context of the discussion that we were just talking about Ona'at Dvarim, verbal mistreatment. So let's also read the end of the story. On that day, the sages brought all the ritually pure items that were deemed pure by the ruling of Rabbi Eliezer, and they burned them in a fire. And the sages voted to excommunicate him. They said, who will go and inform him of his excommunication? Rabbi Akiva, his beloved disciple, said to them, "I will go, lest an unseemly person go and inform him in a callous and offensive manner, and would thereby destroy the entire world." What did Rabbi Akiva do? He wore black, and he wrapped himself in black as an expression of mourning and pain, and he sat before Rabbi Eliezer at a distance of 4 cubits, 6 feet, 6 feet, which is the distance that one must maintain from an excommunicated individual. Rabbi Eliezer said to him, "Akiva, what is different about today from other days?" And Rabbi Akiva said to him, "My teacher, it appears to me that your colleagues are distancing themselves from you." Rabbi Eliezer tore his clothes and removed his shoes like a person in mourning, and he dropped from his seat and sat upon the ground. His eyes shed tears, and the world was afflicted. At that moment, a third of the world's olives withered, a third of the world's wheat dried up, and a third of the world's barley disintegrated. There was great anger on that day, and any place that Rabbi Eliezer looked at burst into flame. Some say that even the dough that was being kneaded into bread spoiled. Even Rabban Gamliel, the patriarch of the rabbinic court, and the head of the sages who were responsible for excommunicating Rabbi Eliezer, was on a boat at that time, and a large wave swelled over him and threatened to drown him. Rabbi Eliezer clearly was holding him personally responsible for his excommunication. And he probably was. Rabban Gamliel said to the waves, "It seems that this is only for the sake of Rabbi Eliezer, as God punishes those who mistreat others." In other words, Rabban Gamliel recognizes that he has mistreated Rabbi Eliezer. Rabban Gamliel stood on his feet and he said, "Master of the universe, it is revealed and known before you that neither was it for my honor that I acted, nor was it for the honor of my father that I acted, rather it was for your honor, so that disputes will not proliferate in the Jewish community." At this, the sea calmed from its raging. I'll just pause here and say, Rabban Gamliel believed, and this isn't the focus of my sermon, but I did want to say it. Rabban Gamliel believed that the conventional truth, that is to say, the truth of the law as interpreted by the rabbis, was more important for the longevity of the Jewish people than a system which relied on the rulings of one individual, one great sage who always knew the right answer. Rabban Gamliel is saying here, we're creating a system of interpretation of Torah, and that system will outlast any of us. And to this day, rabbis continue to interpret Jewish law following the system that Rabban Gamliel set out. And the sea calmed from its raging. Ima Shalom, the wife of Rabbi Eliezer, and her name is Mother Peace, Ima Shalom, she was also the sister of Rabban Gamliel. So they're not just colleagues, they're also brothers-in-law. From that incident forward, Ima Shalom would not allow Rabbi Eliezer to lower his head to supplicate to God. She feared that if her husband were to truly pray, at that moment her brother would be punished. A certain day was around Rosh Chodesh, on which one does not supplicate but she miscalculated, and that day wasn't in fact Rosh Chodesh. So she got the day on the calendar wrong. Some people say it wasn't a calendrical mistake, but rather a poor person came to the door for some bread at the exact moment when Rabbi Eliezer was about to supplicate. Either way, the result was that Rabbi Eliezer was unsupervised during his morning prayer, and he was able to truly pray. When she returned, she saw that he had lowered his head in prayer, and she cried out, "Get up, you've killed my brother." At that moment, a shofar blast emerged from the house of Rabban Gamliel to announce that the patriarch had died. Rabbi Eliezer said to her, "How did you know that your brother would die?" She said to him, "This is the tradition I received from the house of my father. Kol hashe'arim nin alu, chutz misharei ona'ah. All the gates of heaven are locked, except for the gates of prayer of people who have been verbally mistreated." That's the end of the story. I think the key to understanding the story is that Ima Shalom quotes the same teaching that we just had in the legal discourse at the beginning, right before the story happened. In this same passage in the Talmud, they're talking about which is worse, monetary mistreatment or verbal mistreatment. And they say verbal mistreatment is worse, and the gates of heaven are always open to somebody who's been verbally mistreated. The story is about rabbinic power and about rabbinic authority, but it is also about the limits of that authority. On the one hand, verbal debate wins over performing miracles, and the rabbis are able to use the words of the Torah to defeat the author of the Torah in a legal dispute. The majority of the community of Israel is unified by words, not divided, as Rabban Gamliel feared. But on the other hand, a person was cast out and excommunicated by words. Excommunicated, so that he can no longer share words with the community, so that he would be unable to teach. And the pain of that verbal mistreatment was so great that a third of the world's crops were destroyed, and ultimately Rabban Gamliel was killed. The Talmud explains that Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, is only able to atone for sins between a person and God, sins that don't involve other people. For sins between a person and their fellow person, such as verbal mistreatment, Yom Kippur can do nothing unless that person first makes peace with their fellow. It is important to apologize to the people that we have wronged. If you were joking around and it went a little too far, go apologize. If you had a big fight with someone you love or care about and you both moved on and you're still friends but it doesn't feel exactly the same, go apologize. If you said something about someone behind their back, go apologize. The message of Yom Kippur is, don't put off apologizing until tomorrow. Do it right away. It's important also to tell the people who have wronged you, to tell them how you feel, and to give them the opportunity to apologize and to do teshuvah, to repent. Just think. If you hurt someone unintentionally without knowing about it, but they are still thinking about it, still hurting, still anguished, you would never know until they told you. Of course you would want to apologize for hurting them. It's possible that the people who have wronged you don't realize that they did so. They might not realize that you're still hurting about it. For their sake and for yours, give them the opportunity to apologize for their ona'at dvarim. Don't let it get to the point of excommunication or pain. On this Kol Nidre night, let the example of Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Akiva, of Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer, shine for you as an inspiration and as a cautionary tale. May you be able and willing to both forgive and ask for forgiveness. And may you and all of us be sealed for a good year in the book of life. Gamar Chatima Tova. We turn to page 223 for the beginning of Slichot. The Piyut Ya'aleh, page 223.
Yai nai nai, 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 nai 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 nai, yai nai nai, yai nai nai, yai nai nai. Mi boker, ay nai nai nai, veyera pidyoneinu ad arev, nai 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 nai, ay nai nai, ay nai nai, ay nai 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 nai, mi boker, veyera nakateinu ad arev, yai nai nai nai, yai nai nai, yai nai nai, yai nai 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 nai, yai. Ya'ala zichronenu me'erev ve'yavo v'yudenu mi boker ave'yerah hadratenu ad arev Ya'ale dovkenu me'erev ve'yavo gilenu mi boker ave'yerah bakashatenu ad arev ein 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 Ya'ala enkatenu me'erev ve'yavo elecha mi boker ein 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 ve'yerah eleinu ad arev ein 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 ein
Page 224.
Shomea tefila adacha kol basar yavo yavo kol basar lehishtachavot lefanecha Adonai yavo v'yishtachavu lefanecha Adonai v'yichabdu lishmecha lechu neranena Adonai nariel etzor yishenu Nikadma fana bitoda bizmirot narialo asher lo hayam v'hu asahu v'ya'abeshet yadav yatzaru asher biyado nefesh kol chai v'ruach kol basar ish.
On the bottom of page 224, Alana is going to sing the bolded two lines, the last two bolded lines on the page.
והחכמה מאין תימצא, ויעשה מקום בינה. והחכמה מאין תימצא, ויעשה מקום בינה. איזה מקום בינה. הן יראת אדוני היא חוכמה, וסור וסור מרבינה. הן יראת אדוני היא חוכמה, וסור וסור מרבינה.
Page 225.
הנשמה לך והגוף פולח חוסה חוסה על המלאך הנשמה לך והגוף שלך אדוני עשה למען שמך נתנו על שמך shemecha leman shemecha shemecha Adonai v'salachta lavoneinu ki rafu. Darkech Eloheinu l'arich apecha, l'ra'im ve'latovim v'hitilatecha. Le'manch Eloheinu aseh v'lo lanu, re'ei amidatenu dalim v'rekim. Ta'aleh rucha la'lef nidap, tinachem al afer ve'efer. Tishlach chata'enu v'tachon b'ma'asecha tera ki ein ish asa imanu tzedaka.
Page 226.
El ercha paimata uval harachamim nikreta v'derech teshuva horeita gdula rachamecha v'chasadecha tizkor hayom uv'chol yom l'zera yedidecha tefen elenu v'rachamecha ki atahu bal harachamim v'tachanunu tfila panecha nekadem Kohodatel le'anav mikadem mecharon apecha shuv kemo b'toratacha katuv uvetzal knafecha nechesa v'nitlonan kayom vayerd Adonai beyanan ta'avor al pesha v'timcha asham kayom ha'idyatzei v'imosham ta'zin shavatenu v'takshiv menu me'amar Kayom ma'ikra v'shem Adonai.
Please rise as we continue page 226 toward the bottom of the page.
Vayavor Adonai el panav vayikra Adonai Adonai el rachum v'chanun erech hapayim v'rav chesed v'yemet notzer chesed la'alafim nosei avon v'fesha v'chata v'nakei v'salachta lavoneinu l'nachatenu unachaltanu slach lanu avinu ki chatanu machalanu malkeinu ki fashanu ki ata Adonai tov v'salach v'rav chesed v'chol korecha.
You may be seated. Holiness surrounds me, fills the empty space, wondrous luminosity, radiance and grace, pulsing, pulsing, heavenly embrace, pulsing, pulsing to this human place. The artist and the canvas, the sculptor and the stone, the composer and the notepad, the potter's clay is thrown, creating foundation, creating sky and earth, vast and small, present, yearning to be known. Holiness is waiting, here and now and strong, waiting for a witness, a hallelujah song, painted by your light, sculpted, drafted, formed, story, dance, and music, miracles performed. My heart will be your vessel, a vessel for this light, collecting sparks and glimmers, a marvelous delight. Holiness is waiting here and now and strong, waiting for a witness, a hallelujah song. We turn to page 227 for the piyut Ki Hine Kachomer, which imagines that we are the canvas, the stone, the potter's clay, and that God is the artist.
Ki hine kachomer beyad hayotzer Virtzoto marchiv uvirtzoto mekatzer Kein anachnu beyadcha chesed notzer La brit habeit ve'al tefen La yetzer Akine kaven beyad hamsatet Birtzoto oches Uvirtzoto mechatet Kein anachnu beyadecha mechayeh umemotet La brita beit ve'al tefen la yetzer Ki hine kagarzen beyad checharash Virtzoto dibek lahor uvirtzoto perash Kein anachnu beyadcha tomek ani barash La brita beit ve'al tefen la yetzer Ay kine kahege beyad amalach Birtzoto oches uvirtzoto shilach Kein anachnu beyadecha el tov ezalach La brita beit ve'al tefen la yetzer Ki hine kazruchit beyad hamzageg Ubirtzoto chogeg uvirtzoto memogeg Kein anachnu beyadcha mochel zadon v'shegeg La brita beit ve'al tefen la yetzer Ay kine kayariya beyad harokem Birtzoto mesh yasher Uvirtzoto meyakem Kein anachnu beyadecha el kanu v'enokem La brita beit ve'al tefen la yetzer Ay kine kakesef beyad hazoref Birtzoto mesagseg Uvirtzoto metzarev, kein anachnu beyadecha, mamtsil mazar terev, labrita beit, ve'al tefen la'yetzer.
We turn to page 229.
El melech yoshev al kisei rachamim, mitnahag b'chasidut, mochel avonot amo, ma'avir rishon, marbe mechila lechata'im, uslicha lefoshim, oseh tzedakah kol basar v'ruach, lo chratam tigmol. El horit lanu lomar shalosh esrei, zachor lanu hayom berit shalosh esrei, kemo sheodatem lenav mikedem, kemo shekatuv, vayerd Adonai be'anan, vayityatzав imo sham, vayikra v'shem Adonai.
Please rise if you are able.
Vayavor Adonai al panav, vayikra Adonai, Adonai, el rachum v'chanun, erech apayim, v'rav chesed ve'emet, notzer chesed la'alafim, nosei avon v'fesha, v'chata v'nakeh, v'salachta la'avoneinu, u'nachatainu, u'nachaltanu. Slach lanu avinu, ki chatanu, machalanu malkeinu, ki fashanu, ki ata Adonai tov v'salach, v'rav chesed lechol korecha.
You may be seated. I invite you to turn to the handout. We are adding in this evening a piyut drawn from the Sephardi tradition called Adon Hasalichot. It's got a really easy tune, so please do sing along. And when you leave, please make sure to leave the sheets either on your seats if you're coming back tomorrow or in a pile out there, because the other side has the piyut that we're adding in tomorrow.
Adon haselichot bochen levavot, golei amukot, dover tzedakot, chatanu lefanecha, rachem aleinu, chatanu lefanecha, rachem aleinu, hador beniflaot, tavatik benechamot, zocher berit avot, choker kilayot, chatanu lefanecha, rachem aleinu, chatanu lefanecha, rachem aleinu, tovu meitim labriot, yodei hakol nistarot, chovesh avonot, lovesh tzedakot, chatanu lefanecha, rachem aleinu, rachem aleinu, chatanu lefanecha, rachem aleinu, poel yeshuot, sofe atidot, kore hadorot, rochev aravot, shomei tefilot, temim deyot, chatanu lefanecha, rachem aleinu, chatanu lefanecha, rachem aleinu.
Page 232.
El melech yoshev al kisei rachamim, mitnaheg b'chasidut, mochel avonot amo, ma'avir rishon rishon, marbe mechila lechata'im, uslicha lefoshim, oseh tzedakah kol basar baruach, lo chatam tigmol. El horei talanu lomar shalosh esrei, zachor lanu hayom berit shalosh esrei, kemo sheodat aleinav mikadam, kemo shekatuv, vayerd Adonai be'anan, vayityatzeh imo sham, vayikra b'shem Adonai.
Please rise if you are able in the middle of page 232.
Vayavor Adonai al panav, vayikra Adonai, Adonai el rachum v'chanun, erech apayim, v'rav chesed v'emet, notzer chesed la'alafim, nosei avon v'fesha, v'chata v'nakeh, v'salachta lavoneinu, u'chatateinu u'nachaltanu. Slach lanu avinu ki chatanu, machalanu malkeinu ki fashanu, ki ata Adonai tov v'salach, v'rav chesed lechol korecha. Ha'azin Adonai. Selach na la'avon ha'am hazeh kegad al chastecha, v'chasher nasata li'am hazeh mimitzrayim biyadheina, v'sham ne'emar, v'hayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha. Kaper chataenu b'yom hazeh v'tahareinu kema shekatuv, ki v'yom hazeh yechaper aleichem l'taher atchem mikol chatoteichem, lifnei Adonai titaru. Havienu el har kodshacha, v'samchenu b'veit tefilatacha, kema shekatuv, ki veiti beit tefillah, yikareh lechol ha'amim.
The ark is open and we remain standing on the top of page 233.
Shema koleinu Adonai Eloheinu, chus v'rachem aleinu, v'kabel b'rachamim v'ratzon et tefilateinu.
Shema koleinu Adonai Eloheinu, chus v'rachem aleinu v'kabel b'rachamim v'ratzon et tefilateinu.
Hashiveinu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem.
Hashiveinu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem.
Al tashlichenu milfanecha b'ruach kodshecha al tikach mimenu.
Al tashlichenu milfanecha v'ruach kodshecha al tikach mimenu.
Al tashlichenu leitzikna kichlot kochenu al tazvenu.
Al tashlichenu leitzikna kichlot kochenu al tazvenu al tazvenu.
Al tazvenu Adonai Eloheinu.
Amen.
Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu al tazvenu ve'al tishenu ve'al tachlimenu ve'al tefer b'ritacha itanu karvenu l'toratacha ve'lamdenu mitzvotacha horeinu d'rachacha hatibenu lirat shemecha umul et levavenu le'avatacha v'nashuv elecha be'emet ve'uvelev shalem uleman shimcha hagadol timchal v'nislach lavonenu kakatu b'divrei kodshecha leman shimcha Adonai v'salachta lavoni ki ravu. Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu slach lanu mechalanu kaper lanu ki anu amecha ve'ata Eloheinu anu vanecha ve'ata avinu anu avadecha ve'ata Adonenu anu ke'alecha ve'ata chelkeinu anu nachlatecha ve'ata goraleinu anu tzonecha ve'ata roeinu anu charmecha ve'ata notreinu anu peulatecha ve'ata yotzreinu anu rayatecha ve'ata dodeinu anu segulatecha ve'ata keroveinu anu amecha ve'ata malkeinu anu mamirecha ve'ata mamireinu anu azefani ve'ata rachum echanun anu ksheoraf ve'ata rachapayim anu melei avon ve'ata melei rachamim anu yameinu kitzelover ve'ata ushnotacha lo yitamu. Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu tahavo lefanecha tefilatenu ve'al titala midchinatenu she'ein anachnu azefanu mukshei oref lomar lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu tzadikim anachnu ve'lo chatanu aval anachnu v'avotenu chatanu.
Page 235.
Ay, 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 ay. Hashanu, Baganu, Kazanu, Dibarnu, Dofi. Ay, 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 ay. Havinu, Ve'yershanu, Zadnu, Hamasnu, Tafalnu, Sheker. Ay, 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 ay. Atznu, Sararnu, Avinu, Pashanu, Sararnu, Kishinu Oref. Ay, 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 ay. Rashanu, Shichatnu, Tiavnu, Tainu, Titanu. Sarnu mitzvotacha umimishpatacha tatovim elo shavalanu ve'ata tzadik ve'al kol haba aleinu ki emet asita v'anachnu hirshanu.
Page 236, where it says, hey.
Ata yodeya razeh olam v'talu motzi tre kol chai. Ata chofes chol chadrei v'atanu v'chen kelayot b'alev. Ein davar ne'elam mimeka ve'yeni star mineged ay 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 necha uvechen yehir hatzon mi alfanecha ay nay 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 Adonai Eloheinu ay 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 ve'Elohei Avoteinu shetislach lanu al kol chatotenu v'timecha lanu ay 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 al kol avonotenu utechaper lanu al kol pishainu ay nay 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 ay nay nay ay nay 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 ay ay nay nay ay nay nay ay nay 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 nay.
Atonement by Alicia Jo Rabins. Atonement. When I first learned how to recite the confessional prayers, head bowed slightly, tight hand in a fist against my heart, with each whispered word, I was relieved. Here, I thought, is my chance to let go the burden of all I've done wrong, all my failures finally set free. I whomped my fist against my chest enthusiastically, the sound hollow, dead, flesh on flesh cavity. This fallible flesh, I thought, this self caring only for myself, whomp for the sin of deceit, for unkindness, for gossip and impatience and anger. Afterward, I felt cleansed and slightly proud of my self-hatred. Now that, I thought, is atonement, and then added a few more to atone for my pride and self-satisfaction. After services, a white-haired man approached me gently. You know, he murmured, the mystics say we tap to open our hearts, as if knocking on a door. So the person within will open, first a sliver, then a foot, then if we are patient and kind, maybe they will open it fully and invite us in. He said, we practice kindness in the most difficult arena, our imperfect selves. I never saw that man again. Perhaps I never saw him at all. But I think of him on Yom Kippur when I dress in white and bow my head and knock gently on the gate of my heart, whispering, open the door, I forgive you, self, my sweet, fallible love. We turn to page 237 for the confession.
על חטא שחטאני לפניך ביצר הרע, ועל חטא שחטאני לפניך ביודעים ובלא יודעים, ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר על חטא שחטאני לפניך בעיניים רמות, ועל חטא שחטאני לפניך בעזות מצב, ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו, על חטא
שחטאני לפניך בפריקתו.
על חטא שחטאני לפניך בתשומת יד, ועל חטא שחטאני לפניך בתימהון לבב, ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו, ועל מצוות תעשה ועל מצוות לא תעשה, בין שיש בה קומעשה ובין שאין בה קומעשה, את הגלויים לנו ואת שאינם גלויים לנו, את הגלויים לנו כבר אמרנו לפניך והודיענו לך עליהם, את שאינם גלויים לנו לפניך הם גלויים ויודעים, כדבר שנאמר, הנסתרות לאדוני אלוהינו, והנגלות לנו ולבנינו עד עולם, לעשות את כל דברי התורה הזאת. ואתה רחום מקבל שווים, ועל התשובה מראש התחתנו, ועל התשובה עינינו מייחלות לה.
You may be seated as we continue on page 240 where it says bet in the middle of the page.
מי שענה לשרה אמנו בזקנתהו, מי שענה לאברהם אבינו בהר המוריה, מי שענה ליצחק בנם כשנעקד על גבי המזבח, מי שענה לרבקה בהריונה, מי שענה ליעקב בביתה, מי שענה ללאה בעניה, Mishayana lerachel beitzvona.
Uyanenu.
Mishayana leYosef biveta asuri.
Uyanenu.
Mishayana lam yaldot harivriot alavanianaim.
Uyanenu.
Mishayana leyochevet al sefat hayaor.
Uyanenu.
Mishayana lavotenu limotenu al yamsu.
Uyanenu.
Mishayana lemoshe bechoreh.
Uyanenu.
Mishayana lemiriam bivera.
Uyanenu.
Mishayana leaharon b'machta.
Uyanenu.
Mishayana lefinchas bikumo mitoch ha'eda.
Uyanenu.
Mishayana livnot slov chad badam petach ohal moed.
Uyanenu.
Mishayana lechol hatzadikim vehatzadikot vehachasidim vehachasidot vehatemimim vatemimot vehayisharim vehayisharot veharachmaniyim veharachmaniyot.
Uyanenu. We turn to page 242 at the bottom where it says, hey.
Rachamana deyane deyane leani eyanena. Rachamana deyane deyane lemaki cherucha anena. Rachamana deyane lidvirei liba anena anena. Rachamana deyane lidvirei liba anena anena. Rachamana anena rachamana chus ayanena. Rachamana peruk rachamana shazev ayay rachamana. Rachamana rachem alan hashtabagala uvizman kariva neina. Rachamana rachem alan hashtabagala uvizman kariva neina.
We rise as the ark is open for Avinu Malkeinu, page 243.
Avinu Malkeinu chatanu lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, chatanu lefanecha, Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu hachazirenu b'tshuva shlema lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu shlach refuah shlema lechol amecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, shlach refuah shlema lechol amecha.
Avinu Malkeinu Zachreinu B'zikrot Tov Lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu Katvenu B'Sefer Chaim Tovim. Avinu Malkeinu Katvenu B'Sefer Geula V'Yeshua. Avinu Malkeinu Katvenu B'Sefer Parnasa V'Chakala. Avinu Malkeinu Katvenu B'Sefer Zechuyot. Avinu Malkeinu Katvenu B'Sefer Slicha U'Machila. Avinu Malkeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chaneinu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chaneinu Vaneinu, Ki Ein Banu Masim. Asei Manu. Yitgadal v'yitgada shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Be'alma divra kirute ve'yamlich malchute b'chayechon uve'yom echon uve'chayedecho Beit Yisrael bagala uvizman kariv ve'imebru amen. Yesh me'Rabbah mevorach le'olam le'om e'yomaya.
Yitbarach.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitala shemei dekudesha brichu le'ela le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Titgabel tzoloto nuvautehon dechol Yisrael kadamavuhon divishmaya ve'imebru amen. Yesh lama rabba min shemaya ve'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imebru amen. Oseh shalom b'Rama, Oseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imebru amen.
Aleinu, page 246.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, Latei Tudula Leotse Breshit Shelo Asanu Kigoye Haratzot Velo Samanu Kamishmachot Adama Shelo Samachel Kenu Kahem Vegor Aleinu Kechol Hamonam Vanachnu Korim Umisharim Umatim Lifnei Melech Malchei HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. ככתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
We turn to page 248 for the Psalm for the season of repentance, Psalm 27. לולא האמנתי לראות בטוב אדוני בארץ חיים, קווה אל אדוני חזק ויאמץ ליבך וקווה אל אדוני.
לולא האמנתי לראות בטוב אדוני בארץ חיים, קווה אל אדוני חזק ויאמץ ליבך וקווה אל אדוני.
Eternal God who remembers our deeds and our lives, we turn to you for solace and hope when we are bowed in grief. As we recall with affection those who have been taken from our midst, we thank you for our years of love and companionship with them, and for the memories and the undying inspiration which they have left behind. In solemn testimony to the unbroken chain of faith which links one generation of the house of Israel to the next, those who mourn and those who are observing Yartzeit now rise to magnify and sanctify God's name with the words of Kaddish Avelim, Mourner's Kaddish, page 247. Yitzgadal, V'yitzkadash, Shemei Rabbah,
Amen.
Be'alma Divra Kirutei, Be'amlich Malchutei, V'chayichon U'vyomechon U'v'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael, V'agala U'vizman Kariv V'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Le'alam Alamei Almayah. Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shmei Dekudesha Brichu. Le'ela Le'ela Mikol Birchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechamata Damiran Be'alma V'imru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabbah Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom Mimromav Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Yasher Koach to Alana for leading us this evening in our Mariv and Slichot service. And thank you to everybody for being here this evening as we bring in our Yom Kippur. Tomorrow our services begin at 9:15, and our evening service begins at 4:15 with a men's club study session, and at 5:15 for Mincha, and at 6:15 for our Ne'ilah service. Easy to remember. 4:15, 5:15. Well, we'll start Ne'ilah as soon as Mincha is over. 6:15, 6:30, something like that. Yeah. Page 250, we conclude our service with Yigdal.
Yigdal Elohim Chai Ve'yishtabach Nimtza Be'yernet Emetziuto Echad Ve'yen Yachid Ke'ichudo Ne'lam Ve'gam Ein Sof Le'achduto Ein Lo Demut Haguf Ve'yeino Gedulato umalchuto shefa nevuato netano elan segulato vetifarto lokam be'Yisrael kemosheod navi umabit et emunato Torah temet natan le'amoel ayad nevio neman beito lo yachalifael velo yamirdato leolamim lezulato sofeveodea setarenu mabid lesof davar bekad mato gomel leish chesed kemi falo noten lerashara kerishato yishlach leketz yamin meshichenu livdot mechakeketz Yeshuato metim Yechael berov chasto baruch Odeyad shem tehilato metim Yechael berov chasto baruch Odeyad shem tehilato.
Shana Tova Techatemu, may we be sealed in the book of life.